Thanks, Harvey. Welcome, everyone. As Harvey mentioned, this is the first of 5 webinars that we're going to be doing, kind of focusing on how we can move forward a little bit as far as technology in the forestry sector here in Nova Scotia. So this evening we're going to be talking about QGIS, and I'll explain why that's an important subject here in a moment. I just wanted to quickly touch on a few of the upcoming ones as well. So in November, drones and forestry. So that one's just going to be about sort of what are the options if you want to move beyond just flying a drone up and quickly taking a peek. What's involved, what are the different types and costs associated with it, and all of those types of things. The third one in January is the title's not great, but trust me, this is actually a good one. I would call this one the hidden gem. So if you're like most of us who use Excel all the time, there's a couple tools that I wanted to cover there that aren't immediately obvious. I don't see a lot of people using them, and they're actually really powerful. So there's one you can make. I'd really suggest that one. I think that's going to be a good one. Not that the others aren't. February, so drones. This one is more kind of following a workflow. So if you wanted to deploy a drone to go and create some maps, get some additional data like canopy height models, those types of things, this will kind of walk you through the workflow of that. And then finally, March, we're talking again about satellite data. So, huge subject there. We're not going to be able to cover everything, but hopefully give you a few tips and tricks and set the stage for some stuff there. So that's what's upcoming tonight, though, as mentioned, and as promised, QGIS. So what I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to quickly explain why this is an important subject, I think, and something that I thought was important to cover. Then we're going to go through a couple different use cases. So most of the time we're going to spend actually clicking through things and looking at it, working at a couple little live demos. One sort of on the beginner side and one talk about some more stuff on the advanced side. Then also, which I think is related and can really help people move the bar forward on this, leveraging AI. So if you're going down this road and you're new to it, what are some things there that can help you move get you involved and get you productive and producing some results pretty quickly, a lot more quickly than in the past. Okay, so that's the stage. That's what we're going to try and cover over the next 45 minutes, and then hopefully save some time here at the end for some questions. So QGIS. QGIS it's a GIS platform, the same as ArcPro, ArcGIS, ArcMap, whichever you happen to be using. Difference being that QGIS is an open source free software for those purposes. So there's a whole community of developers that contribute towards it. It's been around since the early 2000s. I guess back in the day which was a long time ago for me, 2005 or so, you'd see QGIS used occasionally, but it was kind of the poor stepchild of ArcInfo or ArcView at the time. It was what you used if you had to get some GIS done. Submitting a silviculture claim, I remember, was the big thing at the time. You'd see some people using QGIS just to get that specific thing done, but it was certainly, wasn't the go-to that you see today. I think over the years that's changed, so there's been a lot of development. It really came to my awareness probably about 5 years ago. So working with, I was with Remsoft at the time, working with some big clients all around the world, and somebody like you'd see Stora Enso in Finland using QGIS. So what's going on here? Something's obviously changed. So that kind of triggered my interest, looked into it, and I kind of been using it a lot ever since, after realizing just how powerful that it is. So a few things. As I mentioned, yeah, open source, it's free. There's no monthly subscription. You don't put in a credit card, all of those things. It's actual software that you actually download and you actually run on your desktop, unlike most things these days. Started in 2002, then yeah, around 2009, it really became more prominent with a major release there. The important part, so it's a GIS system with core functionality in it, but there are literally thousands of plugins that you can get for it, which extend the capabilities of it. So unlike Arc Pro, where if you wanted to start doing some work with rasters, you need to go buy a whole separate license to add it on. With QGIS, the real advantage is you just turn on that plugin and you've got access to all, network analysts, all kinds of things that would cost you a lot more money to do over in the Esri ecosystem. And yeah, global community. So it's prevalent around the world, NGOs, companies, all kinds of people using it. Research community, it's very, very prominent over there. And there's user groups and discussion forums and everything that you would expect with a piece of software that's used all over the globe. So in thinking about the context here in Nova Scotia, there's there's a couple reasons why I think it's important to talk about and why I wanted to spend some time this evening, or two sort of contexts where I think this is important. So casual part-time users or people who don't even have GIS now can't justify the cost, or they have another common situation. They've got 2 or 3 ArcMap licenses, sorry, ArcPro licenses, to a few people that are using GIS fairly regularly, but most of the staff don't have access to it. They need to go ask for a map or ask for an analyst, those types of things, and it doesn't really justify the cost of having everybody with an ArcGIS license. So this is an option in that situation. I think it certainly could extend the access to GIS within an organization. That being said, I think there's definitely still a role, and ArcGIS is absolutely fantastic in a couple of contexts. One is, you've got concurrent users, so you've got multiple users who all need to access the same data and be able to edit it at the same time and not get things mixed up. So while that is possible in QGIS, there's a whole lot of setup that you need to do, and you need to host a server and stuff like that in order to get that functionality. Whereas with ArcGIS, get an AGO ArcGIS Online account, and Bob's your uncle, you're good to go. That context is really good. Similarly, on the field data capture side, with Survey 123 and ArcGIS Online, very straightforward and simple. And if that's a lot of what you do, then definitely continue doing that. There's ability on QGIS side, so there is a thing called QField, which is essentially the equivalent of Survey 123, lets you easily build forms and capture data in the field. However, that link, again, it's the issue is bringing data back and concurrently editing and those types of things. So you could do all of the functionality that you have with Survey 123, but it's going to require more complex setup in that situation. However, if you continue on, looking at if you think of this as a spectrum from simple to advanced, on the advanced side, I think QGIS comes into its own again, because as I mentioned, there's all of these extensions, plugins that you can use that are no cost. There's tons of video tutorials and information about how to use them and so on. People are developing them all the time, because it's an easy way to, if you're a researcher, it's an easy way to get your tools out there to the general public. So in many situations, you may have an ArcGIS license and you do your day-to-day editing and creating maps and all of that type of thing in ArcPro. However, having the ability to get into more in-depth and sophisticated analysis using rasters and image classification, all of those types of things, QGIS is a great addition to have on your desktop to kind of use on top of your ArcGIS license. So those are the two situations. And honestly, here in Nova Scotia, what I've found, and I think forestry in general, a lot of times, we'll go ahead, we'll buy an ArcPro license, the standard one, which gets us through most of the things that we need to do. But oftentimes we don't see a lot of raster image analysis done outside of research groups, simply because people think they don't have access to those add-ons within ArcGIS without shelling out another $1,000, $2,000. So I think we've been limited in the type of analysis we do in forestry, and this is a way, I think, of opening that up, is looking at those things. Okay, so that's sort of the background. I'm going to go through sort of a simple scenario, just an introduction to QGIS, what it looks and feels like. Again, this is obviously, we're not here to learn GIS. I'm not going to teach you GIS in the 35 minutes we have remaining. But what I want to do is just give you a sense of what it is, both on the simple side and the complex side, and give you, just a sense of what it is, and hopefully an impetus to kind of go out and spend some time learning it, and taking better advantage of the GIS data that we do have here in the province. Okay, so let's first step, if you don't have QGIS, obviously you got to go and download it. So just essentially just Google download QGIS. That's all you need to do. Bring you to a home page. They'll ask for a donation. If you can, that's great. I forgot that they did that, and I should probably do that because I do use it a lot. But the important piece here is that there's no monthly subscription. You don't put in an email address. You don't need to give them your credit card number and remember to turn it off next month. Any of those things. It's just software that you download. So go ahead, you download it, you install it. The first time you open it, it's going to look like this, only you're not going to have these existing projects. If you're not familiar with GIS, it essentially, this is the same as ArcG. I'm going to say, let's just start saying ArcPro. That's where we're at. You work with map projects and templates. Essentially, that's where you're storing your data, right? So your data can be anywhere, but you're organizing it into one project. That you might have a project related to silviculture, and you might have a special project related to something else, or maybe just a project that you use for building harvest planning maps, those types of things. That's the main concept. So you're going to create a new project. I'm going to skip ahead and go to something that's already set up so that we get a little bit better sense of what's going on. So we're looking at, in the center here, we've got a map. This happens to be my farm and woodlot right here. We're looking at forest data, all those little squiggly lines. You're probably very familiar with those forest data. We've got some stream buffers, and property lines on there. The layout is essentially, if you're familiar at all with ArcPro, ArcMap, it's essentially the same. So we've got a bunch of tools across the top. Over here, this browser I think is a little bit different. This is where you can go to get data. And then the panel down below, your layers that you're seeing here, this is data that I currently have in my project. So I can essentially grab data from here that I want, whether it be a shapefile, whatever, drag it down here, and now it's in my project. Over on the right side, processing toolbox, we can add different toolboxes and things on the right side. The main one that you're going to want to use is this toolbox. These are just that. It's a toolbox. These are things that you could do with your data. So for example, if I intersect in here, I see a whole bunch of different options for things that I can do around intersecting. It could be buffer, whatever you want. That's all in there. What else can I say? Printing a map, if I go to project here and I go new print layout, I'm going to give it a title, essentially, and okay, and it's going to bring in an empty map. From there, I'm going to go I'm going to add item. So I'm going to add first thing I'm going to do is add a map, which is going to be by default that map we were just looking at right here. I can add the scale bar around the bottom, essentially like that. You're familiar with maps. I can set it up whichever way I want. But the important thing is, in this case, so a map, I can now print that out, or as many of you are sort of familiar with, I can print that to a PDF, georeference PDF, which then I can take into Avenza Maps, take to the field, put in my machine, whatever it is. So that's a map print layout there, which is different than the map here that you have here. When you're first getting started, you're going to need some data, right? So the main way, if you want to add data into it, there's a couple ways. If you happen to have shapefiles that are sitting on your computer, you can just go here, go into the directory, drag them, drop them down. Probably if you're just starting out, you don't have that, or you may be used to you already using the provincially available data that's out there. So I'm just going to go grab a URL here. Give me 1 second. I want to show you where this is coming from. So when you're first setting this up, I can go and grab all of the provincially available ArcGIS REST services data to bring into my project. And essentially it's a live stream of the data from the servers that the province has down to my system. So it's a great way to go and get data, background data, for example, imaging. These image files are huge. I don't necessarily want to keep them on my laptop, but typically what I'm going to do is access that data, bring it down, and then store it locally if it's something that I'm going to be using frequently. So I don't want the entire forest inventory for the province. I just want it for my area. So what I'm going to do is connect, bring it down, store it locally, and then I can keep using that data locally. So to do that, in that particular case, I'm going to go to layer, add layer, and sorry, add layer, and then I'm going to go to add ArcGIS REST service layer, server layer. There's other ways to do this. This is one way to do it. I'm going to go there, and now I'm going to go new connection, and I'm going to paste in a URL, and I'll put this URL in the chat as well. I'm going to call it something, call it test, and hit OK. I'm not going to uh, I'm not going to do this now because I'm just going to create a duplicate, but I'll show you what you get. So hit connect. Now over here in my data browser over here, I've got these little folders. Let's think of them as folders with data from the province, etc. So this is one of them here, provincial data, and essentially this is just a folder of all available data that's being streamed by the province. It's the naming conventions are terrible. It's going to take a little while to get used to that and figure out exactly what you need. But essentially, the main ones, so forestry data is the main ones we're going to be interested in. There's other stuff there that's relevant to forestry as well. If I open that up, then I can see all of the different data that Department of Natural Resources is providing through there. So there's land, there's forest treatments, so historical treatments, soil, FEC foil type, ecosystem stuff, forest inventory stuff. So the actual forest inventory is in here. I could bring that over, which I've done already down below. All of that information. It's a actual literal treasure trove of information. So that's there. But as I mentioned, I don't want to be constantly streaming all of the data for the province into my map while I'm using it. So the tip there is if there's something that I know I'm going to be working with. So for example, this forest stands data. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to go and select just the stuff that I want. So I'm going to zoom out to an area. I'm going to do a select. So now my stands data is selected. I'm going to right click. So this is how we sort of export and manage data. Right click on the layer itself. So for stand details, export, save selected features as. So now I'm only, make sure you do this or else you're going to be downloading the entire province's data. Save only selected features. Shape files. So we can save this as a shape file that everybody's used to. I would strongly encourage you to get used to using geo packages. They're just so much better. So I'm going to save this as a geo package. I can either create a new one here, or I'm going to save one into an existing one that I have for, so for example, my webinar project. I'm going to put that in there. And essentially it's a database and it has where a shapefile is just one thing, a geo package has multiple things and types of data in it. So I could have my forest stands, my streams, my roads, all of those things can be in the one geo package, which is one file. And then I can send that to somebody and not worry about all of the files related to it and all of those things. So if you do that, I'm not going to do it here because I've done it before, but I hit OK. And what that does is then downloads the data, takes just the selected parts, and it's going to then save it into either shapefile or, in my case, a geo package, my webinar. And I can see the different feature types that I have there, and then I can just drag those down into my project, edit them there. I can also use that data, of course, in another project. I can colorize it the way I want and all those things. There's an important one as well. So obviously, if you view GIS, this is pretty obvious. But if I go to properties, so this is a little bit different. If I go to properties of a layer, I can then look at all kinds of things. I can set up forms for it. So if I want to add new data, I can set up forms. Symbology, though, is the most common one that you're going to do. So let's colorize this. Let's do, what should we do here? Let's make it a green outline. No, I want to make it a solid color. Do that. Oops, I didn't do that. Anyway, sorry, I shouldn't be wasting our time on this. me go one more time. Fill, gray fill. Okay, you get the idea. So here's the ones that I'd selected and went over into our system. So I'm going to clear that selection. Okay, that's the basics of dealing with it, bringing in data. I should talk briefly about querying data as well. So if we go to, again, on any particular layer, if we right click on it and go to attribute data, this is sort of, in the case of forest inventory, for example, it's stand volumes and heights and all of those types of things that are in there. I can then use that data to summarize. I can query it. So if I want to go to, again, this is don't want to calculate. I want to select features. Here we go. So if I want to do a selection, let's say I only want stands that are over 50 cubic meters of softwood. So I can go here to my fields, fields and values. And so these are all of the fields that are in the forest inventory data. And I'm going to go to softwood merchantable volume. So I double click that. So this is my expression builder over here, softwood merchantable volume greater than equal to 50. Select features, close. So now I can see these features are selected in my attribute table, but also if I close this, I can see for that forest inventory data, these are the stands that have at least 50 cubic meters of softwood volume. Okay, clear as mud, clear as mud. The other piece that I wanted to talk about, so I'm going to close this, or we'll just minimize that. We'll bring up another one. Is around, sorry, I didn't want to go to that one yet. This one. Okay. So more advanced stuff. So, and what I mean by that, for the most part, is using raster data. So raster data, like for example, digital elevation model. You can bring them into ArcGIS and you can view them and so on, but a lot of the analysis you can't do without having additional licenses. So I wanted to show just a little bit about that. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it, but I did want to point you to this site. Again, I'll put the link in there if you're not already familiar with it. So raster data, LiDAR data, those types of things by the province. I haven't found it. Maybe there is a better way to do this, but I haven't found like a live stream where I can just select what I want. I need to go here and actually download sets of data. The way that works is I come to this website, I look at the particular property that I want. So for example, here I want the data for this. So now it shows me this in the selection, and for that area, these are the things that are available. Now I've turned off LiDAR because it's a lot of data, and we're not going to talk about that today. But essentially in that data, I have these files available to me. So underscore CHM is canopy height model, underscore DSM is digital surface model, and underscore DEM is digital elevation model. So I have all of those available. I'm going to typically, when I'm doing this type of work, I'm going to download, so I'm click this little shopping cart, canopy height model, digital elevation model. Then next step, I go over to download, which is this button here. And I click check mark on those ones, and let's go ahead and downloads these as a zip file, and then take the zip file, unzip it. And once it does that, then I have a TIFF file, which I can bring into my QGIS project. Again, so I go to layer, add raster layer, pick the layer that I want. So in this case, oops, sorry. Elevation data stored in here. So if, for example, here's my canopy height model. I pick the TIFF, bring it in. I've already done it, so I won't do this again. And that brings it into my project. So start with digital elevation model. I'll turn that on. So this is one that we did. I think most people are familiar with this. One thing to point out, when you first bring this in, it's not going to look like this. So this is a hillshade, which is gives you a lot of information. When you first bring it in, however, it's going to look like single color. Apply. Oops, not single color. Single band gray. apply. It's going to look like this, which I can kind of tell that's elevation data, but a hill shade is a much better way of looking at it. So just go to properties, render type, change that to hill shade, hit apply, okay, all good. Absolutely. If you're not familiar with this data, it's absolutely fantastic. Like the detail here is unbelievable. This is a road that was put in and you can see excavator piles and these are old roads from the 1970s. This was a forwarding trail from 1970s. Um, Absolutely unbelievable data. So digital elevation model, I can now do stuff with this, which I couldn't over on the ArcGIS side. So for example, let's say I was interested in slope. So I'm going to go here. I want to calculate, this is good visually, but it doesn't, I want to be able to actually put slope on a map or find certain slopes. So I'm going to go to my tools, processing toolbox. I'll click in slope because I want to look for a tool that gives me slope. Here's the one at the top of the list. Click on that. So I want to calculate slope from my DEM, digital elevation model. Not gonna worry about this. We'll just do a temporary. I can save it as a file. We'll just leave it as temporary. Click run. Boom. So now I've got slope calculated. I can also do things like, okay, that's fine. I've got slope, but I want to use it on a map and I'm only interested in a slope, steep slope. So let's say greater than 30. So there's many ways to do this, but let's go raster calculator this time and say, um, let's do it this way. Sorry, if slope greater than equal to 30, then we'll get a value of 1, otherwise 0. See if I got that right. Oh, output layer. I need to give it an output layer. Let's overwrite that old one. It's, oops. What did I do? Oops. There we go. There we go. So now this shows up in white. I can turn off the black. But essentially I've said, okay, here's where my slopes are greater than 30. So that's an example. What else can we do here with our DEM? Let's a view shed. Okay. So let's say I want to place my harvesting. There's a requirement from a woodlot owner that he doesn't want to see the clear cuts. I'm going to do some cutting on this woodlot, but I don't want to see them. So let's do a view shed. View shed here. So I want to use the digital elevation model in order to determine where I can see and where I can't. So I'm going to use, again, my digital elevation model, observer location. So where am I standing? So I could use a different tool and do it by roads, but let's just say he likes to walk. I like to walk on the beach, and that's right there. So I'm going to be looking from there. And I am 2 meters tall, target height, and I can see 2,000 meters, 2,000, 2 kilometers. So let's run that and see what we get. Okay, so now if you remember, our beach was right here. And this in white are the areas that I can actually, based on the elevation, are the areas that I could see from there. If I wanted to take into account tree heights, I could do this as well. So I could use my raster calculator. I could go here and say, okay, digital elevation model, that's the height of the ground, but I want to consider the height of the ground plus the trees. So I could create a new layer that is my digital elevation model plus my canopy height model, height of the trees, and run that and then do the analysis based on that. I know I realize this is just my digital DSM, which I could have downloaded, but as an example. Okay, so that's some stuff that we can use in the raster analysis. I'm just trying to think if there's any interesting, cool tools that we can use there. Oh, we didn't talk about, sorry. Let's turn those off. My canopy height model. So this is very, very valuable. So if you're not familiar with this, or this is something that you can view, you can download and view in ArcGIS. You can colorize it whichever way you want. But if you want to do some actual work with it, you can do that in here. So for example, so this is a raster of the height of trees in the area. The brighter the red, the taller the trees, etc. But what I could do here is something like zonal stats, zonal statistics. So I could say, okay, take my forest layer, so my stands, take my forest stands and calculate the average height based on LiDAR of the trees in that stand, right? So then I'm getting, and you can do other statistics, what's the maximum in the stand, all of that area, all of those types of things. I could do how much of the stand is greater than 10 meters, all kinds of interesting stuff that you can do there when you combine the canopy height model and something like the forest polygon layer in order to get some information beyond just a visual representation of what it is. Okay, we're covering a lot of ground fast. And again, this is just to give you a sense of what it's like working here. However, I wanted to make sure we take a little bit of time to talk about AI because I think there's a lot of opportunities there to use it to sort of fast track your learning and to help you with it. And also, I'll talk a little bit about using it to develop scripts to actually automate some of the stuff that we're going to be doing. So, the first thing to think about, so if you are new to all of this, the first thing that I would suggest is going to ChatGPT or Claude. I use them both. I find, yeah, they're both good. Claude I find is a little bit better for coding, but anyway. But if I was wanting to just learn GIS, I would come here and say, please create a learning plan for me to learn QGIS over the next month. I have one evening per week I want to spend on it. I like a mix of videos and exercises. Sorry for making you watch me type. So anyway, this may take a few minutes or it might be quite quick, but what it'll give you, and you can, you can adapt this to whatever way that you want to do it, but it'll give you a lot of links and a lot of, essentially a training plan or a training route to do that. So putting in week 2, all of the stuff that you want to cover. So that's a really good place to start. The other thing that I use quite frequently, because if you look at QGIS, one of the things that I like a lot better about ArcPro is just where things are and the tools. Like these tool buttons are absolutely terrible, and it's often hard to find things or know exactly. Okay, I used to do it in ArcGIS like this. How do I do it in QGIS? Those types of things. So that type of situation, still next steps aftermarket. Still thinking. Let me pause it there. You get the idea. So I could go here. Let's say I wasn't sure how to do an intersect, or I want to know how to do. I want to find the areas that are within 20 meters of a stream because I know that that's going to be my riparian buffer. So I'm going to say in QGIS, how do I buffer my stream layer by 20 meters? And simple as that. Oops, sorry, cap locks. It'll go ahead and yep. No, it's not. Says it's not connected. It'll go ahead and give you very explicit instructions, and I use this all the time in order to figure out how to do something that I forget or whatever in QGIS or ArcGIS. Same thing. Great resource for that. The other thing, so we're getting over on the advanced part now, but oftentimes what I use it for, if there's something that I'm going to be doing frequently, and I want to automate it so that I don't have to, this thing takes 10 steps and I need to create a bunch of files and there's a bunch of intermediate steps. And then in order to get at the same result every time, what I'll do is actually go to ChatGPT or Claude and ask it for a Python script, which I can then run and recreate that process. So as an example here, sorry, I'm going to go grab a prompt. Done. Okay, so here's the scenario. This is, let's say, pretend I do this all the time. I want to assess a woodlot for how much softwood volume is there. And I want to be able to pick a specific property and have the tool go ahead and look at, okay, in the forest stand, where is the softwood volume, and give me a report and show me a display of what it looks like. So the first step that I would do is create a prompt. So I'm going to go start a new chat here. I'll just paste it here so you can see it. So I'm going to explain in as much detail as I possibly can what it is that I want, what my input data is, and what I'm hoping to get out at the other end with it. So things like I have a polygon layer called property, has some features selected. So I'm saying, okay, I'm going to select features. You need to know that. I would like you to clip the polygon layer, create with forest stand details. So that's the name of my forestry forest inventory layer. So I want you to put those two together, create a new shapefile called woodlot_forest, add it to my project. Specifying that means doesn't just create it, it brings it back in and loads it into your project. Next, I want you to remove any polygons from this new shapefile where it doesn't have a softwood basal area of 8. So if it's not 8 basal, this is just an example. If it's not 8 basal area, remove it. Next, I want to take my streams, buffer them by 20 meters, remove that. Then I want to show a display where the darker green it is, the more softwood volume. And finally, I want to create a report that takes my softwood volume, multiplies by my hectares, and shows me how much wood is in each one of those stands. Okay, so I go ahead and hit go. This is going to take it a little while. So while it's doing that, we can come back and you can see the result. But I did this earlier, so I'm just going to grab the resulting script over here that it did. So as you can see, it is going ahead and creating all of that code, which honestly, I have no idea. I mean, yeah, I kind of understand Python a little bit, but yeah, you don't let that scare you. All you need to know is how to copy and paste. Um, So I've copied some code over there. I'm going to go over here. While that's running, we'll pretend it finished and I copied it. So in QGIS, I can go to plugins and go to Python console. So Python, again, is just a programming language. And you may not know much about it, but all I need to know is that I'm going to paste my script that Claude just created over here. So here's all the programming that is going to do those things. Now, when I first did this, and this happens all the time, you're going to get an error. And all you need to do is copy that error, take it back, put it into Claude and say, hey, dummy, you, I ran it and I got this error. Can you fix this? It'll look at it, fix it. May take you 2, 3 times. If it's just going back and forth and it's not getting it, beyond 5 times, typically I'll do a refresh or I'll switch from Claude over to Claude GP or ChatGPT, something like that. But usually 2 or 3 attempts for something simple like this, and it's able to figure it out and get it. So I've pasted this in here. I hit run. Oh, okay. So here we go. So getting property layer and features error, no features selected. So if you remember, I told it to assume that I had selected features, which I haven't done. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to click on my property layer and I want to select, this is the woodlot that I'm interested in. So I'm going to select all of the properties that I want to analyze like that. And now I'm going to go back here and let's try it again. Okay, so you can see here we've got a table with stand number and total volume, total softwood volume based on hectares times merchantable volume per hectare. And if I go here, you can see it's created this new layer called woodlot forest, where it's selected out just those ones with softwood volume. And it's also buffered my streams by 20 meters. And there we go. So there we go. You now go over and print it or whatever. Again, just an example of something that you might be doing over and over again, and an easy way without really knowing how to code of actually taking advantage of that. You can also get a lot more complicated. So I'm going to flip over here for a second. So this is an example. So this is some drone data of a particular site. On that, something that I commonly do is I've created a canopy height model of the site. So if you're familiar, again, in this case, the lighter it is, the taller the tree is. But oftentimes what I'll do is run through a process that identifies where all the trees are by the local maxima. So if you can tell, okay, well, here's a tree, here's a tree, here's a tree, right? I want to actually create a script for that. So that first example was just a one of. I can actually save these as a tool as well. So I can create a new script, which saves it over here as there's not just these tools, which everybody has. There's also my custom tools as well. So if I go to this one, so my input canopy height model is this. It's a bunch of settings. I'm not going to worry. Maximum tree height, minimum tree height. Let's say we are interested in only trees over 8 meters, da da da. We're not going to worry too much about that. We hit run, and let's see how it does. Give it a second here. New process. I think we're getting, there we go. Okay. Okay, complete. And when I close it, yeah, there we go. So now, again, there's a whole bunch of steps in actually doing this. The point is, it's scripted, and creating that script, I really didn't have to know a whole lot in order to do that. What I really need to know is this is the data that I have at the start, and this is what I want to create at the end. Help me go do that. And in this case, it's a shapefile of point data where each one of these points represents a tree and the associated height of the tree. Okay, I think I have covered everything that I wanted to. Um, so what we're going to do, I'm going to pause here and we're going to start taking questions.